Very much. Thank you, Ciarán, and thank you, Minister, for joining us in person for this bill. And I want to also thank all of those who've contributed to the bill, to David Dodd, Kate Butler and Kieran Mooney and others associated with the office, with the OPLA, who have contributed to the drafting of the bill and to ensuring its legality in in line and letter, to the academics who have worked with me, particularly Deirdre Halloran from NUI Galway, to Ciara Gaynor and Janet Honer from my own office, who have done huge work to bring this bill to this stage, and of course my group for supporting me. And I just as well want to kind of thank all of those who have spoken to me over the last 2 years over the course of developing this bill about their experiences of procurement, either as procurement officials or at those on the receiving end of public procurement. And I think it's important to remember, when we discuss this topic, it may seem wide and it may seem abstract, but in fact, public procurement affects every area of our lives, from the most intimate areas, the food we eat in hospital, the surfaces that our children fall on, the person on the end of a phone line when we're phoning for help. All of these areas are affected by public procurement. And it also affects the landscape and the wider, greatest infrastructural projects. Our roads, our streets, our public spaces, our schools, our hospitals, the buildings we share, these are all part of the public procurement process in many cases. And there are, of course, areas where, like many, I believe, public delivery of public services may be better than public procurement in cases. But where public procurement is used, it is vital that we do it responsibly and that we design and sign contracts on behalf of the public and behalf of the people of Ireland. When we do that, we have to ensure that we are getting the greatest and maximum public benefit, and that includes social and environmental benefit. My interest in this area dates back to 2014, when these directives, the current European directives, were being introduced. And in 2015 and 2016, when I was still a member of civil society organisations, we worked around the potential that we saw in those directives, the scope within those directives for social, environmental and other considerations, scope which has unfortunately largely been unrealised. My bill is not simply more pressing in the context of recent controversies, such as cervical check, such as the collapse of school projects under Cerillion, such as Western Building and so many others. It's not simply a response to the problems which need to be addressed. It is also about the potential to be realised, the fact that we spend tens of billions on public procurement, and that those tens of billions are an incredible source of leverage and a huge source of potential benefit to all our people. We'll turn to the subject matter of my bill, the Public Authorities and Utility Undertakings Contract Preparation and Award Criteria Bill. This is a bill on public procurement, and what it does, it tries to join up the dots in the procurement process and put quality at the heart of that process. There are currently 3 ways that a contracting authority may decide to undertake procurement, 3 bases on which it can decide to make its decisions. It can decide on the basis of price-quality ratio, the balance between price and quality. It can decide on the basis of life cycle costing, or it can decide on the basis of lowest price only. Lowest price only was what was used in relation to cervical check, and lowest price only has been shown to have serious consequences because it removes quality from the equation. And it becomes, if you've made that decision to go with the lowest price only approach, very difficult to try to introduce quality later on in the process. At the time when the European directives were transposed, France and Scotland chose to exclude lowest price only altogether. That lowest price wouldn't be an option for contracting authorities. I'm not attempting to replicate that, and instead my bill focuses on the Dutch model, a model which respects the discretion of contracting authorities but seeks to change practice and culture. Under my bill, price-quality ratio, where price and quality are considered, would become the default and the norm. Contracting authorities do have the discretion to decide they want to go for lowest price only. But if they go for lowest price only, that needs sign-off at a senior level, and they must publish a rationale. Effectively, what this bill does, it means that you must either think about quality or you must think about why you are not thinking about quality. It will, I hope, lead to a change in practices where lowest price will become the exception rather than the rule. In most areas, the bill does not seek to prescribe the exact ratio between quality and price in a decision. It recognises that that may vary. It may be 30%, it may be 80% quality, it may be 60, it may be 40. However, the one area where we do set targets is in relation to the billions which will be spent under the National Development Plan. These projects are not something where it's not the situation that it may be in other contracts, whereby if we sign a 3-year contract, we can learn from it and change it the next time. National Development Plan projects are once in a generation or once in a lifetime projects. We simply have to get them right. And that is why the bill sets a threshold, a target of 50% minimum for quality on National Development Plan projects. Again, exceptions must be made, but a sign-off at senior level is required and a rationale must be provided. I want to clarify something very important. This does not mean, and this bill does not mean, that procurement has to cost more. In the Netherlands, the model which we are following, 73% of contracts still went to a lower bidder. But those lower bidders had also to prove themselves in terms of quality. What it means is that commitments and evidence in relation to quality was on the table right alongside the proposals in terms of price. And what's very important to note, that research from the Netherlands, from the construction industry, academic institutions, found that the public benefit was 2.4 times higher where a mix of price and quality was used. So what we saw was that for a little bit more thought earlier in the procurement process, almost double the public benefit was delivered. What do we mean by quality? This bill is not prescriptive. It recognises that what is quality in one area may differ. Sometimes it's about the track record, the performance, the materials which may be introduced. The bill is not prescriptive, but what it does do, it largely reflects the language of the directives, the wide space within the language of the directives in terms of quality. And what it also does is it requires ministerial guidelines to be put in place. Those ministerial guidelines will contain existing commitments and targets, cross-cutting commitments made by government, already signed off in, not ones that I'm adding in, but ones that exist, in terms of areas like climate, like accessibility, like inclusion, existing targets. And what it does is it gets people out of their silos when they're doing procurement. It promotes joined-up thinking. If I am designing a space and I look to the commitment in relation, for example, to Irish Sign Language accessibility, maybe I build a space for an interpreter because I've become aware of that cross-cutting commitment. If we are using materials, we maybe think a little bit more about their sustainability and how they contribute on our emissions target. It is joined-up thinking, and it is, again, for the contracting authority to decide which elements of those guidelines they wish to take on board, but it requires they show that they have thought it through. I also, in the bill, put forward the human rights duty. Again, the human rights duty already exists for public authorities. They are already by law, including the IREC legislation of 2014, required to promote equality and human rights. What this bill simply does is it requires them to report on how they are delivering on equality and human rights, and to build that in to their regular procurement reports as already required by the regulations. I want to address, as I come to the end of my time, excellent. I want to address just a few questions and concerns that have been raised with me over the course of my conversation with different parties. Who is involved in the sign-off. In the bill, I set out accounting officers, accountable officers, and ministers as sign-off. However, having engaged with the government and listened to the concerns that were raised in that regard, it is my intention to remove ministers from that sign-off process at committee stage, and I have already engaged with the OPLA around amendments to that effect. It will be accounting and accountable officers, usually at Secretary-General level. Will this require more red tape? No. What this bill does, it saves us from complicated processes of repair later on in the procurement process by making sure things are done in a clear and transparent way from the beginning. It is, I believe, an empowering piece of legislation. It empowers procurement officers to think about quality. I've spoken to those who feel nervous about using quality because they feel they'd have to get permission from above. Now we know they can think about quality. They can do a better job. Much as, for example, the fines being added in terms of data protection, empower data protection officers. This bill empowers procurement officials to think in creative and positive ways about the benefits that maybe it's on society. I come to my final point here. Also, this bill has some wider benefits. It rewards and allows for the recognition and reward of those companies, usually SMEs, who are delivering higher standards, who have records, who have done the work in terms of quality. It gives them a potential comparative advantage in the mix, SMEs from whichever European country. And it also has the wider benefit that when the state, as the largest customer in Ireland, raises the standards, it raises the standards right across the board. Again, I want to thank all of those who have supported me in this bill. I believe it can be a game changer in terms of the landscape, the culture and the practice of public procurement, and I believe it will have, if it is successful, ripple effects across every area of our life together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Ruane, you've 8 minutes.